Lordstown Motors, another pre-revenue EV SPAC. So it's pre-revenue, that's one thing. It's in a really hard space, electric vehicles, and it's a SPAC, a way to get public quicker, maybe with less scrutiny, not in all cases, but you do have to buyer beware when you're looking at this category of companies going public. They tend to be early. They confirmed they're being investigated by the DOJ for its reporting of pre-orders. Uh-oh. Like, it's one thing to not even have customers, but then to lie about pre-orders? Oof. This is really gnarly. So 2 weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal reported the DOJ was inquiring with Lordstown, which CNBC confirmed. Okay, so we got real journalistic outlets, Wall Street Journal and CNBC, confirming that the DOJ is looking. Now, they're inquiring. That doesn't mean they're guilty, right? Just because somebody's looking into something doesn't mean that there is a crime. It just means there's a suspicion, and there's enough of suspicion that the DOJ would take it seriously. And they have a large list of things they could look into, and they've chosen to look into this one. Major red flag. Lordstown Motors said in a filing on Thursday that it had received 2 subpoenas from the SEC for the production of documents and information, including relating to the merger between Diamond Peak and Legacy Lordstown and pre-orders of vehicles. And we have been informed by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York that it is investigating this matter. And we hear about the Southern District of New York all the time. That's where Rudy Giuliani started his career before going absolutely bonkers. That's where Preet Bharara from the great Cafe Insider, go to cafe.com and subscribe to his amazing podcast, or stay tuned with Preet, which is a free one. Anyway, if the Southern District of New York is involved, that is a major red flag. They are serious, and they are known for having a very independent streak to them. So before we break down Lordstown, I want to remember Jason's Law. Jason's Law is something I came up with, and I codified it, I think in September of 2020. I'd been talking about it for years, but this is I called it originally my Theranos rule. If a startup becomes worth $1 billion before they launch their product, they are either going to fail or be a complete fraud. Examples, punch up, let's workshop this. And I did, in fact, punch it up in December 20. Remember Jason's Law. If you invest in a company without a launched product and over $1 billion valuation, you will lose all your money, and it might turn out to be a fraud. So I've been workshopping this concept. Nikola, ticker symbol NKLA, is a private company. As a private company, I said in this tweet, would be worth about $100 million max. So I expected it in this tweet to lose 95%. We had Trevor Milton on the pod, episode number 1090. It is a classic episode. It will be one of the 10 best episodes of my career because, my God, this person was delusional. And I think that was like peak Trevor, and it all came apart shortly thereafter. So in March 2021, I made my third version of Jason's rule. If a private company reaches a $1 billion valuation before it launches a product or has customers, it's probably going to fail, and it might actually be a fraud. So be careful, retail investors. When you buy Fisker or Nikola, you're taking a big risk. And so the reason I refine this is it's very rare for a private company to reach $1 billion valuation before it launches a product or has customers. And I put that caveat in there because you could have people pre-ordering things like Virgin Galactic, which had a very successful launch this past weekend. Congratulations to Richard Branson. And when you think about that, they did have, I think, 600 pre-orders of 200K. Those people actually paid money. Or you have people pre-ordering cars now, whether it's Tesla or Ford. So I could see a situation in which people pre-order and give their money. Those are not letters of intent, so keep that in mind. But it seems like I'm now reminding people of Jason's Law every 3 to 4 months. So consider this your 3 to 4 month quarterly reminder. And some very important things to keep in mind about these red flags that we just covered. Valuations that don't make logical sense. What would this company's valuation be? Let's take a SPACing company, be in the private markets. Well, sometimes you know because there's been a private market valuation. In other words, Airbnb, before they went public, had this private market valuation. Now they're going public. Now, that's a company, Airbnb, that we all have rented Airbnbs, or we know somebody. So they have a product in market and tons of customers and tons of revenue. So they don't fall under Jason's Law. But as an example, you know the previous valuation. Nikola peaked at around $34 billion in June of 2020 with no revenue and basically close to no product as far as anybody can tell. And I mentioned that as a private company, ventures investors would have probably invested at them around 100 million max. You put in 20 million, you get 20% of the company. That seems, like a rich valuation, but it's reasonable for a hardware company like that. That's capital intensive. But that's a 340x multiple from my valuation. And I am an expert on this. This is what I do for a living. For 10 years, I've invested in over 300 early stage private market companies. I know what I'm talking about. And so now they're trading at around 5.5 billion, which is about 50 times too high. And so once again, if you can't see who's holding the bag, check your hands. It's probably you. So the people who bought Nikola at 34 billion thinking, oh, well, this is a fraction of the valuation of Apple or Tesla or Amazon. You're literally comparing the most successful companies in the history of humanity against, some dip. Bleep the second half of that word, please. Get some dip who's never accomplished anything in their life. Be careful out there. And what are the insiders doing? This is another thing you have to look at. Have they exited or are they cashing out? Most of the time, the people who are running the best companies have inside information that leads them to not want to sell it. And 100% of the time, the people running a company have inside information. Like literally in their brains are their plans and their hopes and fears and their assessment of, is this a good stock to own? If those insiders are cashing out, it's a red flag. Now, if they're cashing out modestly, that can be reasonable. If it's a person's first company, if they have to pay their taxes because they got awarded some stock, there are some valid reasons that an executive has to sell some shares. But Trevor Milton sold like $70 million in shares before they went public or right as they were going public. And he tried to explain it on the podcast and it made no sense. That's a big number, 70 million. If he sold 7 million, you'd think, okay, he sold 7 million. He's going to buy a house. You pay your taxes. You got 4 million left, depending on what state you live in, 5 million. You can buy a house for that. For a CEO to buy a $4 million house, they're not buying a $60 million jet or a $30 million jet and 3 houses. So that was a major red flag. Today, many small business owners are busier than ever. And because they're focused on managing and growing their businesses, they can't spend the time they need to on recruiting. And that's why LinkedIn Jobs has made it easier to find and hire the best candidates for free. We have had such a great experience finding 2 more producers for This Week in Startups, researchers to sort through all the deal flow I get. And it has been amazing. It's a great place for you to look for a job, and it's an even better place for you to post a job. So many talented people are sitting there waiting to hear about your career options for them. And we use targeted screening questions to get our roles in front of the most qualified candidates with the experience, skills, and motivation we need. Then we use simple tools to filter and prioritize the top candidates for interviews. And best of all, LinkedIn's network now has over 740 million professionals all over the world. LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the right person for your role. They're so confident that you're going to love LinkedIn Jobs, they're letting you do that first job posting free. Every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. They're waiting to hear about their next career adventure, and you just have to go to linkedin.com/twist and post that job listing for free so that you can make their dreams come true.